Welcome to 1,000 Words, a podcast that paints a picture about an artist's creative process. There's a lens to focus on the unique perspective of a specific artist, hopefully drawing insight into inspiration as we brush up on how imagination provides a groundwork for artistic exploration. We're excited to continue that journey with our guest today. I'd like to introduce Kandy Grady, the artist behind Simply Faith by Kandy Grady. She's painted professionally for several years. Art is very much a part of her daily life. She likes to push boundaries and explore challenging subject matter, and developed a unique style of collage as well as color. The key is mixing master techniques with unconventional media. Her artwork is her idea of who she is as a person of color who is a daughter, sister, and a mother. Kandy's experience of navigating humanity and her social environment has made her keenly aware and very conscious of her desire to depict her African American culture in positive ways and vivid colors. Artist Kandy Grady creates her art in her home studio located in her hometown of Dowagiac, Michigan. Welcome, Kandy.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you brought in a beautiful piece of art. Can you describe the piece you brought with you?
Yes. So the piece I brought with me today is called The Essence of Innocence. It's about 12 by 12. That piece is a mixed media of acrylic and ink and oil paint. And it depicts an image of a young girl, and she's surrounded by things that are going to influence her life in the future. But right now, she's kind of held in this circle of innocence. So we have the image depicts flowers where she's going to bloom. And of course, we have to have the birds and the bees. And the figure of her mother and possibly herself in the upper left-hand corner.
And then you said your experience is navigating humanity and your social environment. How does this depict that? What are some of the imagery that you're using that really represents your culture?
Well, the image of the young girl in the center is she is a African American girl, and she's wearing white to help depict her innocence. But it's actually any person of color. Because I have a mixed heritage myself, I can't pick one specific heritage but I do identify as African American. And I think that people forget that these children, they're real people and they start out innocent before, just like any other child. They start out innocent also. And unfortunately, sometimes because of how the world is set up, they have to mature quickly.
Does your artwork convey a specific emotion?
Yes. I liked my artwork to convey joy. I want people to feel happiness. I want them to feel joy. I want them to feel acceptance. And I want them to feel that they can not only feel that for themselves, but they can also put it back out into the world.
How has your background influenced your work moving forward?
Well, I'm a mother of 3 adult children, and so I got divorced. I was pretty young when I got divorced, and so raising my kids on my own, primarily raising my children, really influences my artwork because it's the things that I went through with them as a mother, and it's also their experiences that I've seen them navigate through the world. And so some of it's, it may seem like a negative thing, but what I do is I take and I spin it around and I make it positive. I remember my son when he was younger, he must have been about 12. He's like, something had happened that wasn't that great. And he says, "Mom, I'm just sick of you seeing good in everything." and I just told him, I was like, his name is Demetrius. I was like, you have to see it. it's there along with, the thing that happened that was bad. That's how you mature. And that's how my art has matured also. So, yeah, I think that's what's influenced me. Also, growing up in a small town influences my artwork. I come from a very large family. I mean, large, it's huge. And my family is really well known and respected in my community. So we were kind of looked at like you have to be on your P's and Q's. And, and I grew up in a time where, like this young girl depicted in the image or the artwork that I bought in, I was innocent, and my community helped keep me that way until a certain point, because it was at a time where everybody knew who your parents were. And so they would, keep you in line, with that threat of, I'm going to tell your mother, or don't you do that. I know your mama, I know who your daddy is. Don't you do that, So, so my youth and my adulthood and now has brought me to this place where I'm at right now.
How do we continue to keep the neighborhood feel and build a community that does kind of protect that innocence while still letting you grow as a person?
Ooh, well, the answer would have been a little bit simpler probably before COVID hit. But, we had this discussion at my church not too long ago, and it was about community. And the pastor had preached a sermon about community. And the thing about community is it's more than one person. And it's made up of different people. So if you live in a community, or you navigate in a community, or exist in a community that's just one type of person, you are sorely missing out. You have to go outside yourself and outside what you know and build those relationships, and not be afraid to learn something new, or learn somebody new, or a new culture, and really learn to accept that person, And then I think community starts, but it starts with yourself, But I know it's difficult with COVID. We're just now getting back to gathering again in some instances, which is beautiful. But I think that we can do it if we put our minds to it, definitely.
With the pandemic, we kind of built in our own divisiveness, our own tribalism. How do we move forward? What are the conversations we need to have? And what are the ways that we can continue to have that joy and that happiness that you like to bring to the world?
I think the conversations that we need to have are the hard ones, but we don't have to have them in a group discussion. You can talk to your friend. You can talk to your new friend. Somebody at work that is not like you, people who have different ethnic backgrounds. Why don't you try to get to know them better and have those hard conversations and listen? I have the hard conversations with my friends, but I also consider them my friends because I can have those hard conversations. And even if we don't agree on some things, we can always agree that we don't agree.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you can always agree that, hey, we're not going to see eye to eye on this point, whether it's politics, religion, or race. They always say don't talk about those three things. But then those are the three things we need to be talking about. That's why you don't talk about this and don't talk about that, or don't talk about sex, but those are the things that you need to talk about with people, and the differences of how you see the world.
Does the idea, I think in the Midwest, people are very nice. They try to be very friendly with everyone. How do we make sure that those conversations happen so we don't feel too confined by the idea of avoiding confrontation?
Oh, yeah, I know just what you're talking about because I've lived here all my life. I call that being politely rude because it is. It's like, okay, I acknowledge that you're a person of color, or I acknowledge that you might, that you're not able to identify with your true sexual, body, but it's okay. No, it's not okay. or you have people that are like, oh, I don't see your color. I want you to see my color. I want you to see that maybe I'm transitioning. I want you to see that, hey, I'm different because I'm gay or I'm lesbian. But I also want you to see that and be able to love it about, maybe don't love what I do, or you don't have to agree with that, but love me, the person, you know?
And then you said you want to show African-American culture in positive ways, vivid colors. What do you think is the biggest misconception of people of color, people with different sexual orientations? What do you think is the root of the issues?
Oh man, that's really hard. They go so deep. They go back, thousands, hundreds of years. So it's but the thing is, it's nothing new. Yeah. It's not a new subject. It's been around forever, and people like to make fun of. I don't know what they're calling this generation right now. I don't even know what my generation is called, but they like to make fun that they like to label everything. Okay. But the one thing I noticed is that they give me hope, because what they're doing, they're identifying and they're putting into words these feelings that were underlying, and they're dealing with it. They're addressing it. They're dealing with it. They're bringing it. Now you have like POC or POV. I was like, what is POV? I found out it was point of view. I started cracking up. But what they're doing is they're like really identifying, these different things that have been existing: racism, sexism, human trafficking, and they're putting names to it, and they're saying, hey, we're not going to take it. I'm sorry that my grandfather, he was in whatever group he belonged to that didn't like this group, or that my grandmother, she treated, she had a maid that she didn't treat well, or that my family may have owned slaves, but right now I'm going to take the time and I'm going to address it. I'm going to deal with it. And so I applaud them on that, because generations before them didn't really do it.
I'm going to butcher the exact saying, but they say like a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I think when we thought about hundreds of generations of discrimination for every, race or culture, for anybody, we always think, oh my God, it's so overwhelming. But it is those steps that this next generation is taking that is allowing us to move forward. In that same way, as a parent, you're instilling values on your kids. Your kids are also inspiring you by going this direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My son, he is, I won't say his position, but he does work in a nonprofit that's very prominent. And us having this conversation is like me having a conversation with him. And for a while, I learned so much from him, because at one point he had moved in with me during COVID, and I was just so happy to have him, because I lived alone. But he was actually waiting on moving into a new apartment, and the construction wasn't complete on it. And so he came to stay with me for 6 weeks. And what happened, he was working from home, and he has to have these meetings. And I would have to be really quiet, But with me being really quiet, I could also hear the issues that he was addressing in the nonprofit.
Oh, wow.
And it had to do with birth rights. It had to do with sexual orientation. It had to do with racism. That's the main 3 things they address. And I was like, oh my gosh. And also assault and victims. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did not know what he was talking about, some of the things. And I'm only I'm just the generation above him. And I started to think, how did I make a movement on that? Where did he come from? How did he get that from me? But he did. and just watching me. And so I think that every generation does contribute, but it has progressed now. It has progressed. I think it regressed a little bit like in the 90s, honestly, and in the 80s, but, you know, where it had been in the 70s. But now now it's, you know, it's come back full circle and it's got fire on its tail. You know, it's like, we're here now.
What do you think adds to that conversation so that we could keep moving forward? And what do you think might be counterproductive to that movement?
I have a really good answer for that, but I'm not going to say it.
Oh, no, this is the perfect forum for it.
People will chop my head off, but going forward, I think, just having those honest conversations with each other. And not only with each other, speaking out against it. I think that's the key. If you know you feel a certain way about something and somebody says something negative or, you know, this counterproductive, you are responsible to speak up and say, hey, I have a different point of view and this is my experience. This is my knowledge. This is where I'm coming from. Without saying, I think where it regresses is when people try to say, if you're not with me, you're against me. That's the regression. I can be with you and be against some of the stuff that you want to, some of the vibes or whatever you want to put out in the world. I can be against that, but I can also be with you and say, hey, I don't appreciate that, but I do appreciate this. You know, we do that every time we vote. We don't agree like with 100% Democrat or 100% Republican, but we do pick out those issues, you know, when we vote. And I think voting is like top. And mostly voting in your local, not just waiting for it to be a national issue, voting on local issues, because that's where it starts. It starts at home.
And starting from home, how do we build, how do we use art as a way to express ourselves when it's hard to have those difficult conversations?
Art is healing. Art can save your life if you let it. There's all different types of art form. And thank goodness. It basically is just getting back to be embracing that God in us, the creator. And once we can focus on like embracing him in ourselves, we can start that healing process within ourselves. You know, it starts within yourself. And I think art, when we have that outlet to create something, we feel good. It lets go of those, you know, endorphins or whatever they want to call them. And you just feel good. But also like seeing an image and going, oh my gosh, this made me feel this way. Mm-hmm. And now I can identify, you know, with this person that I don't even know because their artwork speaks to me and I can look at it every day and be inspired by it, you know.
What role does an artist play in society?
A very important one. And not just about making pretty pictures or music or writing. Everything you do is designed by an artist. And people kind of forget that. Everything you brush your teeth, somebody designed that toothbrush. They sketched it out, you know, or they did a graphic and they designed it. The chair you're sitting in. Art is literally everywhere in the world. What God didn't create, we did. And so it's art. It's art. And I think art is important to speak about what's going on in the world. Nina Simone's, you know, famous quote is that as artists, we're responsible to reflect the times that we're living in. And even though I do art that focuses on happiness and joy, I had to go through some pain to find that happiness and joy. And that's in the art because it's part of me. And I know that people like the bright colors, but I have had people contact me and say, I love that. And it made me feel deeper than just that surface joy. It made me really think about what I had been through and how I came through that process. Art does present perseverance, because the artist started out with intention and they persevered and completed that piece. And you leave a lot of soul on the art when you let it go. I finished a painting, true story. I finished a painting the other day. And you know how we do. Sometimes we just can't wait. So we I posted it to Instagram and someone bought it instantly. And I was like, oh, no, wait a minute. Let me varnish it. And, you're supposed to create art to kind of let it out in the world if you're ready as a person. And so I had decided I was ready. But, when people buy it, you're like, okay, wait a minute. I'm still a little bit emotionally attached to it. She's my baby right now, so let me varnish her up and I'll get her to you, because you do leave part of yourself on the image. And that the painting that I just finished is called I Bear Good Fruit. And I was going to bring it. I was actually finishing it so I could bring it here. And I didn't want to bring it because it belongs to someone else now. But it depicts a African-American, it's a man, and it shows half his face. And in his hand, he has large hands, and in his hands, he's holding 4 oranges. And so, it has a nice bright orange colors. The blue skies are in back of him. And it depicts that. It's called I Bear Good Fruits. And the endeavor of the Black man to produce a fruitful life. And the photo credit goes to one of my friends. He was just taking a selfie for Instagram, but even in the artwork of his photograph, I saw art, and social change. So, art is everywhere.
How do you... The titles you give are very... How do you figure out a title for a piece?
It's basically how I was feeling. All my art starts as a sketch. I'm not a very good artist where I could just, I feel this way on the canvas, I admire those people. But all my art starts as a sketch. And so when I sketch it out, it starts telling me what it is. I may have an idea of an image, or I don't do realism very much. His photo inspired me, but it doesn't look exactly like him. Because I like to work with what's inside of me, and photographs are external, and so I like to work from within. So I don't really do realism. But I just lost my train of thought. I don't know. Maybe it'll come back to me.
We have a forum here, so you can have that come back to you. You did mention earlier a couple traits, perseverance in an artist. Do you think having those traits, can anyone be an artist? And what defines an artist in your eyes?
I had a friend send me a artist certificate. It was so stupid. It's like a certificate. It says, this certifies that, Kandy Grady is an artist and blah, blah, blah. And it just had a bunch of junk on it, and it was hilarious. It was a joke because there's no such thing. Art, I started drawing really, really young. Really young. I come from family artists. My family are talent. I'm just the one that took this avenue. But it wasn't that unique, When I was small, we didn't have a lot of toys. Or we didn't have computer games, we had Atari, the ping pong, boop, 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 And so you had to get in your imagination with your Tonka cars and stuff, and my thing was drawing, and my brothers, we always sit around and draw. So, and our friends did, So I think everybody can be an artist. It's not something like where if you draw a picture, it has to look exactly, it's just that can you get free enough to let it come out? You have to be free. You have to free yourself when you're doing it. And you have to realize and get into identifying yourself as an artist and letting that flow from you. And it can be really, really scary. And it's going to take you maybe a little bit of time to find what you think is your signature. But really, the secret is only do it for yourself, and other people can think it's cool and catch on. Don't try to do it because everybody's selling pictures of koala bears, and so you want well, I can draw a koala bear. No, that's not it. You know, if you really want to do it, then do it. Free your mind, let it go, get your space within yourself, and let it out. Even if you don't show anybody, if you just keep the sketches to yourself or the paintings to yourself, just do it. Just let it out.
As you said, when you were a kid, you did art. I think that's something universally every kid gets attracted to art. What do you think inhibits us later in life? Why we can't just kind of freely flow?
Life inhibits you. You have a family, and that's the goal, isn't it? To go forth and multiply. So when you have a family and you have to do things, life gets in the way. And so, but also you can also circle back around. Once my kids grew up, I circled back around. I used to have the corporate job where I had to, put on the corporate, go out there in the world and get to it. But now, the drive is mine now. It's for me. It's not for somebody else.
What are your words of wisdom for an artist just starting out in the field?
To not give up. To not give up. If you do it once a week, don't give up. Just keep going. And another thing, don't be afraid to enter into art fairs. If you want to sell your art, there are a lot of art fairs that are low cost that you can get in. Art Beat is great. Comes around once a year, but it's a great thing to get into. It's like they keep it low for artists. The cost is really, really low. And there's other avenues. There's, if you want to display your art, there are coffee houses that will display your arts, breweries. If you see artists on the wall, ask that manager. Say, hey, are you open to having new artists on your wall? And most of the time they're like really supportive, and they're like, because they love art or they wouldn't have it on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So nobody's going to advocate for your art but you. Nobody's going to come along and say, ooh, girl, what you're doing is great, Especially, unfortunately, don't get your hopes set on your family coming along and saying, oh, wow, that's great, but do you make money doing that? That's always the little whisper, like, do you sell those? Don't get discouraged by that. But just keep going. And, try to use also, not to be an art snob, but try to use the best materials. If you're going to sell your art, try to use the best materials that you can. If you have to start out with not using the best materials, that's understandable. But I used to be a person that said, oh, I'll just paint with anything. But I would go back and I look at my work in honest reflection, and I know why it's flaking, chipping, peeling, fading, because there were certain things I didn't like. And there's like lots of YouTube videos out there and instructionals. A great one is, I don't know if I can say their name on there.
It's fun.
Oh, a great one is Golden. And also Blix. They have great videos, and they're by real artists.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, they're by real artists. I would advise anyone to watch those because you learn how to use the things they create, you know? And I went to school for art, but I didn't graduate with a degree in art. So if you can go to classes also like at your art center or local art center, which I try to do that also. You know, if you're just going to take a 1-day course or whatever, because you're going to pick up something, you're going to learn something, and also find like-minded people.
How do you continue to evolve and grow?
The like-minded people. If you can find an artist community, if you can start finding people and making friends, like when you get out and you start doing these art events, you will meet people and follow them, and develop a relationship with them, because then you start talking and you start learning things. You start learning where they're showing or what they're doing, if you're really interested and you admire what they do, because having people to sit around and talk about your ideas, because there's very few people that are going to want to talk about acrylic mediums with you. They're not going to want to talk to you about, do I have enough ventilation for my oil paints? They're not going to want to. They're not going to want to talk about that with you. So you have to go out there and find your tribe.
Yeah.
I remember when I dropped my daughter, my youngest daughter. She attended Full Sail University, which is an artist university in Florida, and when I was taking her in for orientation and stuff, and my daughter is very quiet. She's an artist, but she's a very quiet person.
Yeah.
And in high school, she didn't really have too many friends, and she is on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. And so I just remember looking around at Full Sail and thinking, why didn't I go here when I was her age? Oh my gosh. And she's like just walking up to people, and they're just like, you could see them like click together like little magnets, like click, 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 click. Yeah. They're like, oh yes, we're here for. And she had found her tribe, and she was smiling and talking, and she didn't have that, in where she grew up. But as soon as she got there, she started developing these friendships with other artists, and it's very important to do that if you can, and you start making friends, and then pretty soon you'll make a new friend, and you'll say, well, do you know so-and-so, this artist? And they'll go, oh yeah, I know her, So yeah, just find like-minded people. When you go to those classes, you will too.
You mentioned they click together like a magnet.
Oh yeah.
When you express yourself and you put something out there in the ether with your work, do you find the community starts drawing towards you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they do. And they start reaching out to you also.
And then in today's modern society, we're moving 1 billion miles per second with everything that's going on. How do you keep the bandwidth where you can keep an open mind, but you also draw your boundaries on this person is negative or this isn't a good influence in my life?
Well, they say you have to love everybody, but you can love them in different ways, I guess. I don't keep my distance from them, but I really see them for who they are. And they may not be in my immediate circle, but I also, try to appreciate them as a person. But the one thing I find that's best for me is that I just try to kill them with kindness, I guess. I don't even, before, if you would have asked me this question maybe 10 years ago, mm-hmm. or even before COVID hit, when you realize how precious life is now.
Yeah.
Like to me, before I would have just called everybody, you're out of here, But now it's like, if I cut this person off, will I ever, see them again? Even if they're negative, I still want to be able to pray for them you know. But to keep boundaries, I just try to love them in that different way. I don't let their negativity influence me, and so you got to stay strong. And that's another thing about, where I say perseverance. You have to stay really steadfast, but at the same time be open. But stay steadfast on your way. But you do have to be open because artists have to learn from our environment. So I can't always cut people off because I have to learn from that person.
And to stay steadfast, to stay perseverant, were there times where you felt like, I want to give this up? And how did you overcome that?
There were times I wanted to give it up. The first time I wanted to give it up, I entered a competition that I wasn't ready for. And I didn't sell anything. Nobody even came and looked at my work. I think one woman, she looked at something I was doing and she goes, "Oh, my son did that in 10th grade."
Jeez.
I know, but I had to go back and I had to be honest with myself. I was trying to make art that I thought people would buy. Mm. Really, I was just trying to make art because I thought that if I made art that people would buy, that would make me successful. Mm-hmm. And being an artist has nothing to do with a dollar sign. If you're getting into it thinking you're going to make millions of dollars, you're gonna lose yourself in that because it's going to drive you crazy. Trying to make that $1 million instead of trying to make the art.
I think we always try to compare ourselves to others. So when you see this, you have so many examples now of art so quickly at the touch of your fingertips. You can find so much art. How do you get yourself to not push yourself too fast, too far, too hard?
I used to make art almost, I try to do something every day, but I used to think that I had to make something every day. When COVID first started, before everyone was like, "Oh, it's COVID," let's run away to our own corners. I had a studio that wasn't in my home; it was in a store, and the store owner, they were also artists. Their medium was clay, but she had some canvases from classes that she was doing, like art classes or mixed media. And she said, "You want these canvas panels?" And they were like 8 by 10. And I think she gave me like 20 of them. Oh. So when COVID hit, I would sit there every day and make art, right? Like sometimes in one day I'd do a painting. And it would take me from the time I woke up till I was going to go to bed. And I said, "Well, this is no way to live." Because I wasn't doing anything else. I was solely focused on art. I remember people used to call me, and then all of a sudden I found myself like lonely, because I was focused. I was taking everything I had and what do they call it? When you project your feelings onto something else.
Oh, I think it is called projection. Emotional projection. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Okay. If anything else is communication, and as long as you can communicate your ideas.
Yeah. So I was avoiding dealing with the issue of life, and dealing with the tragedy, because all you would hear on the news was every day how many people passed. They don't like to tell you that every day now anymore. But, when it first started, we got bombarded with all that information. And it was overwhelming. And so I had to realize that even though I'm an artist, I cannot let it take over my life. I can't, just make art and not look up and see what's going on around me,
When you look up and you see what's going on around you, does that influence your art pieces?
Absolutely. Stories people tell me about themselves. And I am that person that will talk to someone and say hello, and I don't know what it is, but they want to tell me their life story. On our short plane ride, I know everything about them, or a train ride. So I just listen. I kind of got an idea from a piece from my Uber driver in Chicago.
I'd love to hear it.
Well, actually, it wasn't Uber. It was, what's the other one? Lyft. Lyft. So he was lifting me to the airport. And funny thing is, he was an artist also. At some point in his life, when he was very young, he was an artist, and he had made a portrait of his father. Oh. And I said, "Oh, how'd you feel?" And he when he made that portrait, he said, I felt pretty good, because I gave it to my sister, and it still hangs in her living room. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. So it's become like a family heirloom. Yeah. And he's like, girl, it was a portrait of my dad, and I was so in love with my daddy. Oh. And that's what I said. I was like, oh my gosh. He was like, oh yeah, every time I go to my sister's, she lives back down south, and every time I go to my sister's and I see that, I just remember how in love with my daddy I was. His father had passed when he was 11. And I was like, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
In a 15-minute ride to the airport, I learned this beautiful thing. So people are a wonderful thing. They have wonderful stories to learn from.
It's interesting to put time in perspective. 15 minutes can change a whole life.
Oh yeah, I've been thinking about that. I mean, that was a month ago, and I've been thinking about his, what he revealed to me ever since, because I loved my daddy too. Mm-hmm. And even though I was an adult when my dad passed, he passed about 16 years ago. Even though I was an adult, I remember that grief, and I know when I look at my father's pictures hanging on the wall at my mother's house, I think how much I loved my dad, But he didn't have. He was a much older man, and so the photo that he had of his father that he did the portrait on, it kind of got damaged. But they have his painting. I was like, that is the coolest thing. Yeah. In 15 minutes, I learned that.
Imagine what you could do in an hour a day.
Yeah. He did so many incredible things in his life in 15 minutes, and he knew right where to take me in the airport, because he had moved to Chicago when he was in his 30s, and he was in his 70s, present day, and he had helped build part of the airport. He's like, oh yeah, I know where it's at. I worked at the airport for 30 years. I helped build this, this part of it, and I was like, wow. You should be like a national treasure or something. You have so much, knowledge to give.
In those harder days, when it feels overwhelming, what keeps you inspired to continue going forward?
My grandkids.
Oh, tell me about them.
My grandkids love art, and they love to create. And my daughter is really good with them. My grandkids, they live all the way on the other side of the nation. They live in Florida. And so if I draw something, they want to see what I'm drawing. And I want to see what they're drawing. And they send me their drawings, or they send me their art, And the joy of making art when I see them doing it, it's incredible. Kids always have kept me inspired to make art, because they're very open, and they believe who you say they are. I taught art at community centers in my community, and I also have taught art with the Pokagon band in Dowagiac for a few years before COVID. I don't think they've had been open since then, where they have the Pokagon band has a summer camp in Dowagiac. It's a beautiful wooded area, and so the kids are free to run and they come in and they create, and they're just really happy, and they're open to whatever you say, and they think that everything is incredible whenever you do it. It's like, just mixing paint, or whatever. And at the community center, the same way, the kids would come after school, and so they just, they think everything that you show them, you have to realize they may be seeing it for the first time. So they think like, oh man, this is great, or they never thought of something being, like art. And so they keep me inspired. And I remember at the end of one of the courses, a girl who was really shy at the beginning, she came up to me and she handed in her artwork because I collected them. We had an exhibit at the end. Mm-hmm. And when she signed her name, behind her signature, she wrote artist. Oh. And I was like, doggone right. And I kind of started off with them like that too. But they believe that they are who you say they are, and I kind of set the tone for that when I walk in, because I'd say, hey, today, everyone here, just look around, look at everybody. And they all start looking around, because they're, we're going, ew, I said, everybody here today, right now, from this point on, you are artists. And so I would do that with them when classes start. But they gave me much more than I gave them. They inspire you. If you want honesty, ask a kid. They will tell you that that's not good,
Children are so inspiring, and one of the things I like is their imagination. What is the best question that you can think of that a child has asked you about art?
The best question is the question of disbelief, I think. When they see something that you made and they go, did you do that? And I go, yeah. And they were like, wow, And my girlfriend who teaches dance, she taught me a really good way also to communicate with them that they can do it too. And I go, because they always wonder if they can do it. And I go, oh yeah, you can do it. You just follow the steps. And they're like, well, I don't know how to follow steps. Well, my girlfriend told me to tell kids, oh, just copycat me. And they understand copycat. They know what it is to copycat. Oh, I can copycat. That takes the scariness out of it for them. Yeah. But I always think that's like the best question, especially like when it's a big painting or something. They're like, oh, wow, did you make that? Did you draw that? And I love the other one. Well, what is it? What's it supposed to be? I go, what do you see? And they'll tell me what they see. So they, like I say, they always give me, and sometimes they see something I never saw in it, and I'm like, oh, all right.
Yeah. So you said children inspire you. How can we inspire the next generation of children?
I think if we let them keep their imagination. Unfortunately, growing up, and like you asked me a question previously, like what separates you from art as you get older or whatever, when you're a child and you start making art and all of a sudden you stop. People tell you things like you can't be an artist, you can't make money at it, it all becomes about money and about life and have families. And so I think, just let the children keep their imaginations in some way. I know they have to have, structure in their life, but give them that outlet. I think my daughter is doing a very good job with always keeping crafts in her house. And she does something that drives me crazy, but she lets them make that mess, Mm-hmm. She lets them make that mess. She has a designated spot for them to make this mess in her house, and to let them have their imagination. And if it doesn't look like the picture, that's okay too. But just let let children have their imagination. My grandson, he runs around on a stick, and that's his rocket, you know. I had no idea. One day I moved the stick, and he was like, "Where's my rocket?" He's only 2. He just wanted to know where his rocket was. I had no idea what he was talking about. But if you just let them keep that imagination, and if you encourage it, you don't know who you'll be turning out into society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, it might be the next great engineer if you let them, or the next great scientist, or the next great astrologist, because they have that imagination. Because with imagination comes the question, why?
I want to end on that, but you said one thing that I think is really important. You said that when you were talking to a child, you said you could follow these steps. Another person came to you and said, say copycat, and that resonated with them and they were able to do it.
Yeah.
How do we remove some of the ivory towers so that people can keep their imagination? Or we can make it more inclusive, make art more inclusive by removing those ivory towers.
I think the first thing is that we have to put art back in school and make it relevant. Art is mostly considered something that's not really needed in school. But it is, because sometimes that's the only place that child gets to create. Every child in the U.S. has to go to school, right? In a public place like a school, there's not much opportunity for art if they don't deem it necessary. You know, they cut the budget so much that art is left out. Kids have to go outside of school to seek art. They have to go outside of school. I mean, when I went to school, we had art, we had drama, we had band, we had choir. Those programs have been cut. That is the big, white, ivory tower wall that's in the way right now. Because that's where kids spend most of their day. And so if you put art and make it important in school, then it's going to be important in society. Because school is a structured place, right? Where people of authority, teachers and principals. And so when kids see that art is in school in a place of authority, it becomes important to them too.
I want to thank Kandy Grady for teaching us and giving us her time, effort, and insight. Thank you for listening to 1,000 Words. This episode was recorded at Wolf Den Studios in South Bend. Our audio engineer is Dustin Jabersky. We hope you enjoyed this journey of inspiration, imagination, and exploration. I'm Ryan Doss, reminding you to have fun, be creative, and enjoy a wonderful day.